And time for a look at today's market drivers. All three major indices ending the day lower after the Dow crossed the unchanged line 54 times. Utilities was today's worst performing sector. Americans filing for first-time unemployment benefits fell to a 5-week low. Claims dropped 9,000 to 282,000. Oil rallying 4.5% to post its fifth straight day of gains. Crude ending the day 51.43 a barrel. Big jump, Dave.
Well, we end with oil. Let's continue talking about oil. Is fear of a Mideast breakdown spooking the stock market? Not to mention the oil market. Let's bring in our panel. We have Sabrina Schaefer, Forbes contributor and executive director of the Independent Women's Forum, Rob Frost of Frost & Frost Wealth Management, and Fox Business reporter Adam Shapiro. And panel, I got to let you know, the president's speaking in Birmingham, Alabama right now at a community college. Maybe we can take a side panel of that, show the audience. He's going through one of these long introductions, and he's going to be he's still involved in the introductions right now. As soon as he gets on to talking about something hard, particularly about today's news events, we may cut to that. But Adam Shapiro, what about the market? What is going on today? Is it all about the Mideast?
Today it's all about the Mideast. Tomorrow it'll be about something other. Because investors are just nervous. We've had a good run, 5+ years, and people are looking for a correction, whether that's 10% or 20%. I'll leave that to smarter people to decide. But people always feel that good times can't last forever.
Well, Sabrina, we do have the situation where Saudi Arabia, I mean, the center, the mother lode of oil in the world, is taking aim at some of Iran's proxies down in Yemen and its southern border. And if the Iranians get really ticked off about that, they may do something to Saudi Arabia. That could change everything.
Right, and there's reason to be concerned about any of this strife, David. Of course, 4 million barrels of oil pass through the Arabian Peninsula every single day. So any of this kind of foreign policy strife that's taking place does drive up the cost of oil. We saw Brent crude go up to over $2.62 today. West Texas crude went up over $1.62 higher. So we did see an impact. I think the important thing to remember is just how important U.S. production is right now. Things could be a lot worse if things weren't going so well here at home.
Saudi Arabian production, I think, is paramount in terms of making the price for oil something that traders trade on. And what do they make, about 9 million barrels a day, or they produce about that much, 9 to 10 million barrels a day. If they are concentrated on foreign policy issues, particularly using military force against Yemen, they may have to close down some wells.
Potentially they could, and I think it's sort of ironic that here we are in this country trying to figure out what to do with all of our oil, and overseas we're having serious problems. The Middle East always has issues. This is another serious skirmish. It could be a serious skirmish. When you can't get oil from the Persian Gulf to the Suez Canal, that's a very serious problem. And if Saudi Arabia has to pull back, it could be interesting to see what oil prices, where they can go from here.
Well, Adam, what are the traders saying right now? Are they predicting a shoot up in prices or what?
Well, some analysts are expecting oil prices to continue falling. Remember the famous note from Citi that we're going to see oil trading around $20 a barrel. It's not happened
that was
yet.
Before all this happened, though. That was before Saudi Arabia and Iran began pointing at each other.
It was the turmoil in the Mideast, but let's assume, let's look at something else. If things do stabilize in the Middle East between Iran and all of the players, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Egypt, if those things stabilize, what's going on with the global economy? And the Citi note says the global economy is not going to sustain demand for oil, and we've already seen it play out here. We've got no storage capacity. We're running out of space, and we keep pumping.
Very good point. I think you're right on the mark with that. Meanwhile, the desertion charges brought against Sergeant Bo Bergdahl stand in sharp contrast to the administration's glowing comments about him last May, even though it was known then that he was likely a deserter whose actions caused the death of his colleagues. So will this scandal rub off on the president's party? Sabrina, Fox News, by the way, is reporting there was no negotiation between the Taliban and the administration on the release of those 5 terrorists. These were 5 commanders in the Taliban. They just demanded it, and we gave them.
Yeah, I think this absolutely will have an impact from a political standpoint. And as we're seeing, talking about just a minute ago, we're also seeing that foreign policy is rubbing off on the markets today, and I think will continue to do so. And one of the big problems is that we have an administration, as Ambassador Woolsey was saying, that doesn't have a clear foreign policy strategy. Sort of one day we're here, one day we're there. And I think that the Bergdahl scandals really puts that into sharp relief. This is a president who doesn't seem to really understand the threat we're up against or how to counter it.
Adam, how does this rub off on the economy itself, if at all?
I don't think it would rub off on the economy, but I think a lot of people it's almost like Jimmy Carter with the Malaise speech years and years ago.
Yeah, I remember.
I mean, what is the administration's policy? Where do we stand as a nation? I mean, what is our foreign policy? We're playing both sides of something that no one understands.
We just had the CIA director on, and I asked him whether he saw any consistency in the foreign policy, particularly towards the Mideast of the United States right now. He said no. He couldn't see that. That's got to eventually have an effect on economies.
Yeah.
Well, clearly there isn't any consistency, but just to agree with Adam, I agree. I don't think it's going to rub off on the economy, but it's certainly going to rub off on people's minds about the political environment, about the current administration, about which direction they're going. If investors are concerned, regardless of the economy, investors are going to pull out of the market. So it could have an effect on the market.
Sabrina,
but I don't necessarily think the economy.
The Wall Street Journal today had an editorial saying that if Bergdahl's guilty of deserting, the White House is guilty of deserting its obligation in protecting the nation. Is that going too far?
No, I don't think it is at all. I think that, look, if the president has one job, if this administration has one job, it's to keep the American people safe. It's not to talk about the minimum wage. It's not to impose a national health care program. It is to keep the American people safe. And there is a sense, especially in our, sort of more vulnerable cities, perhaps like Washington and New York, that we aren't really safe, that this president isn't taking this seriously, that he's more concerned with the reputation of his party and passing through sort of big government legislation than keeping us safe. So I think it will.
Gang, hang in there. Again, pending what happens with the president and his speech in Birmingham. We're going to come back to you to talk about whether the market is over-leveraged by now. But meanwhile,